Hola a todos, soy Samuel Jurado, Managing Director de Sirif Sport Consulting, y hoy os traemos el segundo vídeo de esta interesantísima serie sobre los impuestos que pagan deportistas y agentes cuando son transferidos a un club en Inglaterra. Si os perdisteis la primera parte, no preocuparse, aquí os dejamos el link, no sé si por aquí o por aquí, en alguna parte, para que veáis los impuestos sobre el contrato de trabajo. Hoy vamos a hablar de los derechos de imagen, del patrimonio, de inversiones y muchas cosas más, así que si os interesa, vamos.
Let's talk about other income that the athlete has and doesn't come from the club. Image right. Sometimes they get paid directly, sometimes they get paid through a limited company. How is the difference?
Right, so if they get paid directly, that would be classed as their personal income and they would have to declare it on their personal tax return and pay taxes according to the personal tax rates. So in your last example, we talked about the athlete is earning £150,000, so he's already an additional rate taxpayer. That means he's paying 45% tax. So any additional income he gets through these image rights, that would be paid with 45% tax and 2% national insurance on top of it, so almost half of the money gone into taxes. If this money is channeled through a limited company, then it will be different. The limited company would have to declare it as their income, obviously, and at the end of the year they would have to pay corporation tax of 19%, and that's it. The player doesn't pay anything until the player pays himself a dividend from the company or withdraws a salary from the company in addition to his wages from the club. Only at that point he would be liable for his personal tax. Otherwise, if he doesn't touch that money, if it stays in the company and the company goes on and invests it somewhere else, the only tax liability that the company has to pay is 19% corporation tax. So yeah, in other words, it's more cost efficient, more tax efficient to channel the money through a limited company rather than getting it on his personal name.
However, if he gets paid through a company, he will have to pay when the company gets the incomes. And then when he gets the income, does he have to pay twice?
The company, yeah. When the money comes into the company declares it as its earnings and pays 19% corporation tax on it. And then when he takes the income from the company to himself, if he pays himself a dividend, then yeah, he would have to pay tax on it. So in other words, you can say yeah, it's going to be taxed twice. 19% corporation tax on one side and 32.5% dividend tax
so
on the
why
other side.
An athlete will choose a company to get paid?
Because his salary from his contract of employment with the club is, in most of the cases, is enough to keep him going, you know, all his expenses going. So he might want to keep that money coming in a limited company, and then later on, once his contract expires with the club, then take it as his salary and dividend. So he only pays 19% tax and retains the money in the company. So those are the retained earnings of the company. Year on year, the company accumulates all those earnings, and maybe it gets to a few £1 million when he obviously finishes his contract with the club. Then he can start taking salary from that limited company or pay himself dividend as well. So it doesn't make sense if he takes the money straight away, goes into the company, and if he takes it straight away, then, you know, from taxation point of view, more or less, it becomes the same thing, you know. But if he retains the money in the company and then withdraws it later on, that would have more benefits.
That could be a safe decision.
That would be the safe decision. Yeah. That's why a lot of people channel the money through a limited company, because they want to keep the money in the limited company, or they could invest that money through the limited company. Then the company becomes the owner of that money, not the athlete, until obviously the athlete withdraws the money from the company in the shape of dividends or salary. Only then it becomes his income and he is liable for taxes.
That will be safe.
Yeah.
So the player was already earning quite a lot of money in Spain, and he decided to invest some money in homes in Spain, and also in shares in the US. Does he have to pay anything in UK regarding this aspect?
Well, in our example, the player is non-resident for the first 3 months. He doesn't have to declare anything or pay any tax on his non-UK income.
So he will have to pay just For the income he received in UK.
In UK, that's it. As a non-resident, he only has to declare his UK income.
You say he doesn't have to pay because he's not resident. But if he stay in the UK for the next financial year, he becomes resident. He will become resident.
Yeah.
Does anything change?
Yeah. When he becomes a resident, he would have to declare all his income from the UK and from overseas. So all the income that money he's invested in Spain, in property, money he's invested in shares in the US, if he makes a profit, then he would have to declare capital gains on his shares, and rental income coming from Spain. If he's rented those properties, then he would have to declare that rental income here in the UK and pay tax accordingly.
So all the income worldwide?
Yeah, all the income worldwide. Yeah.
So basically, they will have to take into account if they are residents or non-resident.
Non-resident, yeah. But there is a third category as well. Like if
third category.
Yeah, there is. You could either be a non-domicile resident. So a non-domicile resident person doesn't pay tax on overseas income. So he doesn't have to declare his overseas income here in the UK. So if the athlete opts into non-domicile status, they would only have to again declare their UK income and pay taxes on it. Any income that they have coming from Spain or from the US or from anywhere else in the world, they don't have to declare it. So they have to declare their status to HMRC. Nearly 5 million people in the UK at the moment are non-domicile. So
can they choose if they declare as a non-domicile?
They can choose, they can opt in. They would have to declare it to HMRC that we are non-domicile, and for them to be non-domicile, it makes sense because they have their main home outside the UK. So there are certain rules that need to be followed. Not anybody could declare that I'm non-domicile. For example, I cannot be a non-domicile because I've got my main home here. I'm settled here, I've got my family here. So for someone who's not settled, whose parents are from another country, he was born in another country, like a lot of footballers would be non-domicile for tax purposes, although they would be residents, but non-domicile residents. So all they have to declare is their UK income here in the UK. Anything from overseas doesn't need to be declared, and it works on remittance basis actually. If they have a gain, for example, from shares in the US, and they remit the money back here into the UK, then they would have to pay tax on it. So if they don't remit the money here in the UK, and if they keep the money in the US or in Spain or wherever they are from, then they don't have to pay any tax, or they don't have to declare anything to HMRC. One another thing that you have to keep in mind is if they become a non-domicile, they would lose their personal allowance. Remember the personal allowance that we mentioned, 12,500, which they don't qualify for anyways because they're a high rate taxpayer. So a non-domicile person doesn't get any personal allowance.
So that third category will be the most interesting.
Yeah, most footballers, highly paid footballers, would normally opt into non-domicile status and just pay taxes on their UK income. Any income overseas, they don't declare to HMRC because they are non-domicile.
I guess Spain doesn't have this third category, but it could be quite interesting if we think about this third category. So
right.
We'll think about that. So bearing in mind that our player is a Spanish and came to the UK, it's possible that the same income can be taxed in both countries. Will he have to pay tax in Spain and the UK?
No, I think Spain and UK, they've got a double taxation treaty between them. So any tax that they've already paid here in the UK, they don't have to pay it back in Spain. So what would happen is they would declare that this is income that they've made in the UK, and this is how much tax they've already paid. So if the Spanish tax is higher than the tax here in the UK, then they would only pay the difference. That's how it works here in the UK. And if it is less than the UK tax, then they don't pay anything because they've already paid their tax.
Right. So they don't need to pay twice.
No, they don't, because there is a double taxation treaty. Right. But if it was a player that was coming from anywhere else in the world, they would have to check the rules with that country if the UK government has got a double taxation treaty or not.
Okay. So Brexit time.
Right.
Bearing in mind that our player came to UK in January after Brexit, does it affect to the player incomes?
No, with regards to personal tax, I don't think there's anything changing after Brexit.
So everything remains the same.
Everything remains the same. The taxation and all that, personal taxes and all that's still the same. Yeah.
That's something good at least.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the last question regarding the player: is there any area where the player can save tax?
Yeah, I believe on their personal tax return, if they claim expenses, that's the area where they would save some tax. Typical expenses that a football player could claim is the cost of the kit, the laundry cost, traveling cost to away games, also travel cost to home game if they're on loan, and if they've got an injury and they have to travel for medical reasons, that could also be claimed. And then there are some other expenses that they could claim. For example, charitable donations. A lot of football players pay big donations, so that also brings relief at 20% rate to the player. Other than donations, if they've paid professional subscriptions and fees from their own pocket, that is also an expense that they could include on their tax return. So bearing in mind, our player that we spoke about, he's a 45% taxpayer. At least on some part of their salary, they get paid 40%. They pay 40% tax, so they would get relief at 45% as well, or 40% if they are a 40% taxpayer.
So much for the analysis of the athlete. I think we have done a thorough review of.
Absolutely, totally agreed. However, I would advise anyone to seek professional advice, speak to a professional advisor, a tax advisor, because these areas of tax are very complicated, especially the residents, non-residents, whether you are domicile, non-domicile, claiming expenses on your tax return. These are all areas where even HMRC is very interested into all these matters. Now and then we hear about these investigations by HMRC into professional footballers. So it's very important that whatever you do with good advice of a professional advisor and not make your own judgment or not take your own assumption. Always good to speak to a professional advisor, I would say. And yeah,
I totally agree with you. It's better to be well advised to avoid problem in the future.
yeah.
So don't do it at home, please. And then, I guess this is not finished here. This is not done. We still need to check the agents commission, but we will do the next session.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about agents commission and other things, then do subscribe to Sirius channel.
Ya habéis oído hasta aquí. Si queréis saber cómo tributan las comisiones de los agentes en las transferencias al Reino Unido, no os perdáis la tercera parte.